There are quite a few news about Britain. So first of all,
Yeah.
Trump, like you said, just recently visited Britain
Mm.
for the second time, right? This is the second time the state visit. What is the purpose, the whole purpose of his trip? Britain put up a show, a real show, red
Yeah.
carpet and the royal families, all that. What exactly the purpose of that trip?
It goes back to the winter just after Trump was inaugurated. And the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was very embarrassed because he had publicly backed Kamala Harris during the
Okay.
presidential election.
I didn't.
And but just to say, he not only publicly backed, but he sent teams of
Mhm.
Labour election activists to the United States to help Kamala Harris win the election. And then, of course, she lost. So he was embarrassed by that. And he was also trying to get the US to agree to provide a backstop for European peacekeepers to Ukraine.
Mhm.
And he wanted Trump to scale down the level of the tariffs that would be imposed against Britain. So he thought that he would flatter Trump, and he went to the US in February and he said, why don't we have a state visit and you can meet the king and you can visit Buckingham Palace and you can do all of these things and we'll throw out the red carpet for you. And Trump, of course, accepted it because Trump, let's be frank, is very easy to flatter. I mean, he's very susceptible to this sort of thing. And so he did. He came for the second state visit. I don't think any other president has had two state visits, by the way.
Mhm.
But it achieved absolutely nothing. The times have changed since February. The business with the election activists has been forgotten. The backstop and the European peacekeepers to Ukraine is going nowhere. The tariff thing is done, and it's been a disaster for Britain, by the way. And we could talk about that later.
Mhm.
But anyway, the invitation had been made and it had been accepted. So Trump came. The visit itself, as virtually the entire British media are commenting, was empty of any real substance. And it was the strangest state visit I have ever seen. And I would say why. And it's something that Chinese people perhaps ought to notice, which is that almost the entire state visit took place outside London.
Oh,
So he
okay.
didn't go to Buckingham
That's good.
Palace. He
Uh-huh.
didn't go to the Palace of Westminster. He didn't address the British Parliament in Westminster Hall, which is the medieval building inside
Mhm.
the Palace of Westminster, where uh, leaders who come on state visits normally address the members of the House of Commons. Um, there was nothing like that. And the reason is that both Starmer and Trump are so unpopular in London that they wanted to keep Trump as far away from London and Starmer himself as
Uh-huh.
far away from London as possible, because they knew perfectly well that if Trump and Starmer, especially if they appeared together,
Uh-huh.
were in London, that would invite protests,
Okay.
and that was not what they wanted to do. I have never known anything like that happen before on any state visit. It is unique, and it has been much talked about and discussed in Britain itself.
But there were still protesters. They even projected some
Yeah,
picture or something with
yeah,
Trump with Epstein on the
that's right.
Windsor Castle, right?
Castle, that's right. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I mean, that all of that was there. It didn't help that just before the visit, the British ambassador
That's right.
to
Hmm.
Washington had to be sacked. By the way, that particular person, Peter Mandelson,
Hmm.
is not a professional diplomat. He's a politician and a very senior politician indeed within the British Labour Party and a
Okay.
close political ally of Tony Blair's, just saying. So
Hmm.
this is big news in Britain. But anyway, the point was this man was involved with Epstein. The king's brother was involved with Epstein, and the president of the United States himself was involved with Epstein. So, on top of everything else, the ghost of Epstein hung over the entire state visit.
Now they did sign a Britain-US tech called the Prosperity Deal that supposedly they're going to put in some money. I was very skeptical when these kind of things signed because it's if you read it, I was reading on the website, the White House website. It's very vague and very high level, not much substance or details at all, giving me the feeling. And then I also read that even the Guardian think it's not necessarily it's, if it's called a tech. So of course, people thinking about AI now, and it does seem like there's some AI involved. Seems like okay, but even the Guardian that pointed out that Britain doesn't need to follow the U.S. big tech firms in this area. Britain actually can chart its own territory,
Mm.
and even pointed out that like DeepSeek, China's model, right? That figure out
Yeah.
something yourself. So it doesn't really need that kind of a whole Britain, along their tech, AI something. So that seems like the only thing that they achieved, but I'm not sure it's such a great deal for Britain. I'm not even sure it's going to happen in terms of the investment that promised. They're going to build
It's
some data centers probably. I don't know.
right, right, right. I can settle this. It's a completely empty, worthless scrap of paper that means absolutely nothing at all. I mean, do you remember Donald Trump's deal with the Ukrainians over rare earths? You
Okay.
remember all that and all the time and energy that we spent talking about that?
Hmm.
And do you ever hear anybody talk about it anymore? I mean, this is exactly the same thing. So Starmer and Trump had to pretend that something important came of this.
Okay.
So they got their officials to cobble something together. There's an awful lot of talk at the moment about tech and AI and all of
Hmm.
that,
Uh-huh.
and the importance of all of these things. So they came up with a piece of paper, and it's exactly what you said. You read this piece of paper from a distance. When you hold it from a distance, it looks as if something was agreed, and then you go close up and you go through it clause by clause by clause, and there's actually absolutely nothing there, because there is absolutely nothing there. Now, Britain could in theory be a leader in AI. We
Hmm.
have enormously strong maths
Yeah.
departments in
Hmm.
some of our best universities.
Yeah.
We have all of the intellect, the expertise to do this. We are nowhere. We are zero in AI because we have no plan to develop AI in Britain. Our government has no industrial strategies of any kind at all. And this does require, bear in mind, we have no big tech companies. We don't have an Apple, for example, or
Hmm.
a whatever. I mean, we don't have anything like that. So or a Google
Hmm.
to organize this. So in Britain, it has to be done by government. And even in the US, it's really done by government. We Government could do it in Britain, but they are not doing it. And if they tried to do it, they would make a mess because they have no idea how to do it.
Hmm.
So, despite the fact that all the pieces are there, like a jigsaw that's broken about, and all it needs is somebody to put the pieces of the jigsaw together, there is no such person. So it's just an empty scrap of paper because the British come with nothing of substance to offer. You're quite right. They could do what the Guardian said is absolutely true, but we are not going to come up with a deep cheat type project. I mean, China can, we can't. We don't have that kind of economic, technical, scientific, educational, academic, social infrastructure that does this, where groups of young people come together. They're loosely connected through small companies, and they're told, just go ahead and come up with what you can, and we will support you to do it. There is nothing like that in Britain today. So we bring nothing to the table here. And as for the American side of AI, I'm increasingly coming round to the view that it is a pharaonic, gigantic, hubristic structure that ultimately is going to fail.
Hmm.
Um, in this game, China is Apple, not today's Apple, but the
Hmm.
Apple of Steve Jobs' time,
Hmm.
and America is IBM. I mean, they are their whole organizational approach to this is simply wrong.
Yeah, I agree. I also feel Britain has the talent.
Yeah,
DeepMind, which is the Google AI lab, originally coming from Britain.
yeah, yeah,
So I actually think this deal possibly
yeah,
the US will suck out the British talents
yeah. I was,
and then build some data center. Data center doesn't generate that many jobs, but it
no.
consumes a lot of water and electricity and noisy. It's even within the United States, there's a lot of protests now for building data center now because it's basically simply increase your electricity cost. I mean, people pay more because of
Well,
data centers.
Well,
So,
that is exactly right. And actually, you bring me back to an important point because if you're really going to be serious about AI, you need to sort out your energy infrastructure.
mhm,
And in Britain, it is all over the place. I mean, energy costs in Britain are 4 times higher than in the United States.
mhm,
We do not have a major program to upgrade our energy system. I mean, we simply don't.
mhm,
So, I mean, we have already shortages of energy, and going for data centers and things of that kind would only make the situation much, much worse. If you have a real plan to move forward with AI, then you need to move forward with your energy systems
mhm,
too. And in Britain, we're not doing that.
mhm,
And by the way, what you say about the Americans sucking the best scientists from Britain, they've been doing that since the Second
mhm.
World War. I
Yeah.
mean, Britain was at the forefront of radio electronics.
Mhm,
Um, Along the Germans and the British, independently of each other, created the first electronic computers. All the
mhm.
British people went off to America and were absorbed by IBM. So
Yeah.
it's an old, old story, and it's going to repeat itself. But the thing to say about this particular document is that Starmer isn't even interested in this. No member of the British cabinet takes this seriously. The closest we ever had to a potential British government being interested in this matter was some years ago when Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party, and some people within the Labour Party, not Corbyn, by the
Mhm,
way, suggested that um, British Telecom, which is Britain's major
mhm,
telephone provider, could be harnessed to connect every household in Britain and to provide them with fiber optic broadband,
mhm,
and that this could be done. Um, th- that was the only time it was ever anything like that was proposed. And, this is a very basic idea,
mhm,
actually. I mean, we're not
mhm,
talking about cutting edge technology. We're just talking about spreading the existing technology. And I remember the response, which is that this is just something that will make teenagers happy and it's intended to appeal to young people and to get them to vote Labour. And nobody took that idea seriously. So we just don't have the structures to make this happen. I
mhm,
say this, by the way, with no pleasure. I'm talking about my own
mhm,
country.
mhm.
But that is the reality which people in China need to understand.
Well, there were also protests, right? The protest is a little bit confusing to me because supposedly it was organized by the so-called far right. I mean,
Mm.
the mainstream call it far right.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit skeptical, but nonetheless, okay, they're supposed far right to kind of like anti-immigrants or something. But then
Yes.
there's also counter protest as well. Protest, and then in the middle of it, I also saw a picture. Somebody had a banner asked King Charles to fire Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
So people just protest whatever they're not happy about. Is that what it is? It was
Yes.
pretty
Well,
clear.
that was basically what it is. It was nonetheless a most unusual event, and it is one that has shocked the entire political class because the man who basically called the protests is an individual, Tommy Robinson, who is not
Hmm.
very widely liked or supported in Britain. He's, in some respects, an inconsequential figure, if I can say. And I think in his case, one can legitimately call him far right,
Okay.
whatever that means. But I mean,
Hmm.
he is that. But most of the people who went to this protest, and most people thought that about 10, 15,000 people would turn up, I
Yeah,
mean,
but we, yeah.
what actually happened was it was, say, between 100 and 200,000. I mean, it's more than the 115,000
Mhm.
than the police are saying. It is absolutely not the 3 million that some people are claiming. So, but maybe somewhere 150,000, something of that kind. Anyway, that was completely unexpected. But what has shocked the British political class overall is that there was no single theme that united all of the protesters. Many of them were against it, immigration
Mhm.
into Britain. Others were more concerned with law and order
Mhm.
matters. Others were concerned with economic questions, prices, housing, all of those things. The thing that brought them all together, there were two things that brought them all together. Firstly, they came from particular demographics, the working class
Mhm.
and the middle class, but those demographics which historically have supported the British Labour Party.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, that's an important thing. And secondly, they were mostly, more than what they were for, they were very strongly against the entire British political class, even more the Labour government, and still more the Prime Minister, Keir
Mhm.
Starmer. The things that were said about him, the chants that were sung. In Britain, we have this practice. A lot of these people go to football matches. And if you go to football matches in Britain, one of the things that people at football matches do is that they sing songs, and
Mhm.
some of the language is very coarse. And as somebody who doesn't go to football matches, it's not my world. But anyway, this is very much what they do. And they were doing exactly the same on this march. They were singing chants, talking about Keir Starmer in incredibly crude and coarse terms, like I have never known happen
Mhm.
about any British Prime Minister before. And it showed the extent to which the Labour Party's historic electoral base has turned completely against the Labour Party and the Labour Prime Minister. And this has created shockwaves across Britain because it means that the political system, the political legitimacy, the political authority of the system is now in deep crisis.
Now, King Charles does have the power to dissolve the
Yeah.
cabinet. Is that right?
Yes, he does. In
Okay.
theory, he can
Okay.
dissolve. He can dismiss the prime minister.
Uh-huh.
He can dismiss any minister he chooses. He can
Okay.
dismiss the entire cabinet, and he can dissolve the House of Commons and call fresh elections. No British king has done this since the
Mm-hmm.
1830s. So that theoretical power exists, but the what we call a convention in Britain, a convention is a custom which has the power of law, even though it is not a law. It
Mm-hmm.
is so strong that it is always abided by. I mean, not abiding by it would generate a major political crisis. The convention is that the king only dismisses ministers, the cabinet, and dissolves parliament at the request of the prime minister.
Okay. Well, then it's kind of like lose the purpose because to me it's like a balance, right? If the king does have that power,
Yeah.
it will make the prime minister a little bit mindful of what he's doing. But okay.
Now, well, the king in the system, um, in certain respects, has no power at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because all his powers are exercised through the prime minister, which, by the way, means that the British prime minister has enormous powers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he because he can exercise all the theoretical powers of the king, but the king does have a role within the British system, which is that he receives all the information. He is in direct contact with the intelligence agencies, for example. He's in direct contact with the military. He's in direct contact with the Foreign Office. and
Mhm.
he's able to give the prime minister advice. And when the prime minister does this, right, the king, sorry, does this,
Mhm.
he does so in many cases with the backing of what you might call the permanent state
Okay.
in Britain. Britain is a very, very difficult country to understand. We've discussed this before because
Mhm.
we have no formal political system. We have no no written constitution.
Mhm.
Everything works in this very strange way, where some things are written down, others are not written down.
Mhm.
We have some laws, we have some conventions, we have all sorts of ideas, and it's very fluid, and it's something that you have to be an insider really to understand. And if you are an insider, by the way, that gives you enormous power within the system.
Okay. Does that probably partially explains that censorship in Britain now is bad, isn't it?
Yeah.
That one of the TikToker, Dylan Page, I don't know if you heard about him. He's very big on TikTok. He was saying recently, he said he has videos that TikTok is showing outside Britain, but cannot
Yeah.
show inside Britain because it's violated some British law. So can we say that censorship in Britain probably is worse than in the United States?
Yes, it is, absolutely, because there are no safeguards against it. I mean, there is no First
Mhm.
Amendment to the Constitution in Britain. We have the protection of the European Convention on Human Rights, but the provision for free speech, which from memory is Article 10, says that free speech can be restricted where it is in the interests of a democratic society.
Okay.
So that gives the government enormous power, and so we have very few. We have basically no really strong free speech protections,
Mhm.
and the culture of Britain, going back to the time of the empire,
Mhm.
basically, is that we don't really do free speech here. We may pretend that we do, but
Mhm.
actually we don't. And yes, I have heard about this person on TikTok because this is
Mhm.
obviously the world I inhabit.
Mhm.
And I know of many cases, including friends of mine, who are on returning to Britain from foreign countries, have been stopped at the airport by British
Mhm.
officials and have been taken away, and they've been called influencers, and they've been
Mhm.
asked what exactly it is that they're doing and why are they supporting China or Russia or Hamas or whomever and all of that sort of thing. And basically, it's a kind of threat, it's an implied threat and warning, and lots of that is going on, and the police will arrest you if you put on X the wrong thing
Mhm.
and all sorts of things of that kind. So Britain is not quite the land of the free that British officials who come to China tell
Mhm.
people in China that it is. There is nothing that I've ever heard of that happens in China that doesn't happen
Mhm.
here. Just to say,
In China, I think the main difference is that, first of all, it's pretty clear, what other things you
yeah,
is too sensitive,
exactly.
for people to touch. Well, then you just don't need to touch like a Dalai Lama, for example. Why do we need to
Yes,
talk about Dalai Lama? I don't even think
yeah,
he's that relevant, so no need to talk about
correct.
him. So it
I
doesn't
agree.
bother.
I agree. I agree with you about the Dalai Lama. Just to say,
And it is
yeah,
a little bit sensitive to strictly
yeah,
criticizing the leader, a particular leader. That is,
yeah,
you should
yeah.
be careful. But it's okay to criticize policies. If you don't like a certain policies, you're okay to talk about that.
Absolutely. But you see, that's the difference. That's where we go back to what I said about the fact that we have a very, very fluid system in Britain.
Uh-huh.
Because in China, you don't. China has a clear system, clear
Mhm.
lines of control, and clear rules. In Britain, there is nothing like that.
Mhm.
Everybody has to be careful all of the time. And the result is that you have to be especially careful what you say
Mhm.
because you don't know. You
Yeah.
don't know where the boundaries are. I have to I have to deal with that every single day when I
Mhm.
do programs. I have to engage in careful language. And sometimes I tell people on my programs, on my channel, I say
Mhm.
I'm talking very carefully now. And everybody in Britain who listens to me knows exactly what I mean.
Mhm.